Black nurse ignored by doctor hospital chief truth revealed changes medical team view forever. The cardiac monitor screamed its warning as Dr. Adrian Wells continued to dismiss nurse Amara Johnson's concerns, his back turned to the patient who was rapidly deteriorating before their eyes. The tension in the room was suffocating. Dr. Wells, her SD elevation is increasing. I think she's having an MI, not anxiety, Amara insisted, her voice firm despite the doctor's dismissive wave. Nurse Johnson, I've already diagnosed Mrs. Rodriguez with panic disorder. Give her the lorazepam as ordered and stop overstepping, Dr. Wells replied without even glancing at the monitor. Amara felt her heart pounding as she looked between the middle-aged Latina patient gasping for breath and the arrogant physician who refused to listen. The moral weight of the moment pressed down on her: follow protocol and obey the doctor's orders, or trust her 15 years of cardiac nursing experience and fight for her patient. Dr. Wells, with all due respect, I'm seeing clear signs of myocardial infarction. We need to activate the cath lab now, Amara stated, stepping between the doctor and the door. The doctor finally turned, his eyes narrowing as he looked down at Amara, then at the Hispanic woman on the bed, then back to Amara. Nurse Johnson, this is the third time this month you've questioned my diagnosis. Is there some reason you believe your nursing degree trumps my medical education? The unspoken implication hung heavy in the air as staff members nearby pretended not to hear. Was his dismissal about professional hierarchy, or was something else at play? The monitors continued their urgent beeping as Mrs. Rodriguez clutched her chest, her eyes pleading for help. In this critical moment, Amara made her choice, one that would cascade through the hospital hierarchy, expose hidden biases, challenge established power structures, and ultimately force everyone to confront an uncomfortable truth about whose voices are heard in medicine and whose lives are valued. Eva Rodriguez had arrived at Mercy General Hospital's emergency department 3 hours earlier, presenting with chest pain, shortness of breath, and diaphoresis. As the evening charge nurse, Amara had immediately recognized the classic symptoms of a heart attack and expedited her triage, only to be frustrated when Dr. Wells dismissed the case as another anxious middle-aged woman after a cursory examination. Now, with Mrs. Rodriguez's condition rapidly deteriorating, Amara made the most difficult decision of her career. I'm activating the SDEMI protocol, she announced clearly, reaching for the phone at the nurse's station. Dr. Wells' face flushed with anger. You will do no such thing. This is insubordination, Nurse Johnson. Amara kept her voice steady as she dialed. I'm exercising the chain of command protocol, Dr. Wells. You can report me later, but right now this patient needs intervention. The room fell silent except for the cardiac monitor's persistent alarm. Nurses froze, wide-eyed at the confrontation. Dr. Wells' jaw clenched as he stared at Amara with cold fury. The power dynamics of the emergency department had just been upended by a black nurse challenging a white doctor's authority, something everyone witnessed, but no one dared acknowledge. It was a moment that would change everything at Mercy General, though none of them yet knew just how far the ripples would spread. Dr. Josephine Chen had been chief of medicine at Mercy General for just under a year. At 52, she'd broken numerous barriers as a woman of Chinese descent in hospital leadership. Her office on the top floor offered a panoramic view of the city, but tonight her attention was focused entirely on the personnel files spread across her desk. The incident in the emergency department 3 days ago had escalated far beyond a typical case of chain of command activation. Dr. Wells had filed a formal complaint against Nurse Johnson for insubordination, while the patient, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had indeed suffered a major heart attack, had survived only because of Amara's intervention and was now recovering in the cardiac unit. Josephine removed her reading glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. The hospital grapevine was buzzing with versions of the story, and she needed to address it before morale suffered further. But something about this case felt different, more significant than the typical doctor-nurse power struggle. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called. Marcus Thompson, the hospital's risk management director, entered with another stack of files. I found the patterns you were looking for, he said, his expression grave as he placed the documents on her desk. It's worse than we thought. Josephine opened the first file, her eyes widening as she scanned the data. How long has this been happening? At least 3 years, Marcus replied. The statistical anomalies are impossible to ignore once you start looking for them. And no one noticed until now? Josephine asked, though she already knew the answer. Some patterns remained invisible until someone specifically decided to see them. No one was looking, Marcus said simply. But now that Nurse Johnson has forced the issue. Josephine nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of what lay before her. This wasn't just about one nurse and one doctor. This was about systemic issues that had been festering beneath Mercy General's prestigious reputation. Thank you, Marcus. I'll need to handle this carefully. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Let's discuss next steps. As they began strategizing, Josephine couldn't help but admire Amara Johnson's courage. The nurse had risked her career to save a patient, unaware that her actions would ultimately expose much deeper problems within the hospital's walls. Amara's modest two-bedroom apartment had always been her sanctuary, a place where hospital stress couldn't follow her. Tonight, however, she paced the living room, unable to shake the weight of uncertainty. 3 days had passed since the incident with Dr. Wells and Mrs. Rodriguez. 3 days of sidelong glances from colleagues, whispered conversations that stopped when she entered the room, and a palpable tension during shift handovers. Her phone buzzed with yet another text from her mother. "Any news about your job, baby? Should I come over?" Amara typed a quick response. "No news yet. I'm fine, Mom. We'll call tomorrow." She wasn't fine. The possibility of losing her nursing license terrified her. Nursing wasn't just her career, it was her calling, her identity. As a first-generation college graduate whose parents had sacrificed everything to give her opportunities, the thought of disappointing them crushed her spirit. Her father had always told her, "In this world, you'll have to work twice as hard to get half as far." She'd proven him both right and wrong, working 3 jobs to put herself through nursing school, graduating with honors, and becoming one of the most respected nurses in the emergency department. But now one decision might unravel 15 years of exemplary service. A knock at her door startled her. Through the peephole, she saw Michael Acaffer, her neighbor and close friend who worked as a surgical resident at Mercy General. "I brought dinner," he said when she opened the door, holding up a bag of takeout from their favorite Ethiopian restaurant. "Figured you might not be taking care of yourself." Amara managed a small smile, grateful for his thoughtfulness. "Thanks. I've been living on coffee and anxiety for days." As they spread the food on her small dining table, Michael studied her face. "Any updates from administration?" "Nothing, just a terse email saying my case is under review and I should continue reporting for my scheduled shifts." Amara tore a piece of injera bread. "The waiting is almost worse than any punishment." "You did the right thing, Amara," Michael said firmly. "Mrs. Rodriguez would have died." "I know that." "But was it worth potentially ending my career?" She voiced the question that had been haunting her. "I love being a nurse, Michael. It's all I've ever wanted to do. Would you have been able to live with yourself if you hadn't spoken up and she died?" Amara's silence was answer enough. Michael reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "The hospital grapevine says Dr. Chen is personally reviewing your case. That's unusual and probably good news." "Really?" Hope flickered briefly before doubt extinguished it. "Dr. Wells has a lot of influence. His family practically built the West Wing." "True, but Dr. Chen doesn't seem like someone who's easily influenced by hospital politics." Michael paused. "There's something else you should know. Some of the nurses are organizing support for you. They're saying this isn't the first time Dr. Wells has dismissed symptoms in female patients, especially women of color." Amara's fork stopped midway to her mouth. "What?" "Apparently, your stand has opened a floodgate. People are talking about things they've observed but never reported." As they continued eating, Amara felt the first stirrings of something beyond fear, a sense that perhaps her actions might catalyze needed change. Still, the uncertainty of her own future loomed large. "Whatever happens," Michael said as he prepared to leave, "you're not alone in this." After he left, Amara sat at her window, watching the city lights blur through unshed tears. Tomorrow she would return to the hospital, head held high, to face whatever consequences awaited her. She just hoped she'd still be a nurse when it was all over. Dr. Adrian Wells strode through the emergency department with the confidence of a man accustomed to deference. At 45, his salt-and-pepper hair and tailored lab coat projected the image he'd carefully cultivated, the distinguished physician from a long line of medical pioneers. The Wells family name adorned the hospital's West Wing, a constant reminder of his family's legacy at Mercy General. Today, however, there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Nurses who typically rushed to assist him seemed busy with other tasks. Residents who usually competed for his attention found reasons to consult with other attending physicians. Adrian noticed but dismissed these changes as he reviewed charts at the nurse's station. His focus remained on the formal complaint he'd filed against Nurse Johnson. He'd been lenient with her previous impertinence, but publicly undermining his authority had crossed a line. The hospital needed to make an example of her, or other nurses might get similar ideas. Dr. Wells. He looked up to find Sofia Rivera, the ED's head nurse, standing before him. Her expression was professionally neutral, but something in her eyes made him uneasy. Nurse Rivera, he acknowledged with a nod. Mrs. Rodriguez asked me to give you this. She handed him an envelope. She's being discharged from cardiac rehab today. Adrian took the envelope, annoyed at the reminder of the case that had sparked this whole situation. Thank you, he said curtly, pocketing it without opening it. She's lucky to be alive, Sophia added, lingering a moment longer than necessary. The cardiologist said another 30 minutes without intervention and she would have had irreversible damage if she'd survived at all. The implication was clear, but Adrian refused to engage. Is there something else you need, Nurse Rivera? No, Dr. Wells. She turned to leave but paused. Oh, Dr. Chen's office called. She wants to see you at 2 p.m. today. Adrian felt a flicker of satisfaction. Finally, the administration was addressing his complaint. Thank you for passing along the message, he said, already mentally rehearsing how he would present his case against Nurse Johnson. Sophia nodded and walked away, leaving Adrian unaware that his world was about to be upended in ways he couldn't imagine. Later, alone in an on-call room, Adrian finally opened the envelope from Mrs. Rodriguez. Inside was a simple card with a handwritten message. Dr. Wells, I want you to know that I heard everything that day in the ER. I heard you dismiss my pain as anxiety. I heard you ignore Nurse Johnson when she tried to save my life. I heard the way you spoke to her. I will never forget that she fought for me when you wouldn't. Neither will my family or my community. With the life Nurse Johnson saved, I will make sure others know what happened here. Eva Rodriguez, Adrian crumpled the card, his face flushing with anger and something less familiar, shame. He tossed it toward the trash but missed. Leaving it on the floor, he straightened his lab coat and headed toward his meeting with Dr. Chen, still confident in his position and unaware of the reckoning that awaited him. The hospital cafeteria hummed with the usual lunchtime activity, but Amara felt isolated despite sitting at a table with several colleagues. It had been a week since the incident, and while she still had her job, the emotional toll was evident in her tired eyes and the weight she'd lost. You've barely touched your food, observed Danielle, an ICU nurse who had become increasingly supportive. Not very hungry, Amara replied, pushing her salad around the plate. You need your strength, said James, an ED tech who had witnessed the confrontation with Dr. Wells. Especially with the department meeting this afternoon. Amara looked up sharply. What department meeting? James and Danielle exchanged glances. You didn't get the email, Danielle asked. Dr. Chen called an emergency meeting for all ED staff at 4 p.m. today. Attendance is mandatory. Amara's stomach knotted. No, I didn't get any email. That's strange, James frowned, pulling out his phone. It went to everyone, see. He showed her the screen with the email notification. Amara's name was clearly on the recipient list. Maybe check your spam folder, Danielle suggested. Before Amara could respond, she noticed a hush falling over the cafeteria. Looking up, she saw Dr. Wells enter with 2 other physicians. As they walked toward the food line, conversations resumed, but quieter, with furtive glances in the doctor's direction. He looks stressed, James observed. Good, Danielle muttered. After what he did, please, Amara interrupted. I can't afford to make this personal. Whatever happens at this meeting, I need to remain professional. Speaking of which, James said, lowering his voice, have you heard about the chart audits? What chart audits? Amara asked. Risk management has been reviewing all of Dr. Wells' cases from the past year, Danielle explained. Focusing especially on female patients and patients of color who were diagnosed with anxiety or psychosomatic issues. Amara felt a chill. How do you know this? My roommate works in medical records. They've pulled hundreds of files. The implications were staggering. If what Danielle said was true, this went far beyond Amara's individual case with Mrs. Rodriguez. Don't get your hopes up, she cautioned herself aloud. This could still end with me being made an example of for insubordination. I don't think so, James said, nodding toward the cafeteria entrance where Dr. Josephine Chen had appeared. The chief of medicine rarely ate in the main cafeteria, preferring the executive dining room. Today, however, she deliberately walked to the food line, greeting staff members along the way. When she reached the register, she paused near Dr. Wells' table, exchanging a few words that made the color drain from his face. Whatever's happening, Danielle whispered, it's bigger than any of us realized. As the trio watched Dr. Chen exit with her lunch, Amara felt a peculiar mix of dread and hope. The next few hours would determine not just her future, but potentially the culture of the entire hospital. I should get back to my unit, she said, standing up. I need to check my email and prepare for this meeting. We've got your back, James assured her. More people than you know. Walking back to the ED, Amara felt eyes following her, some sympathetic, others curious, a few hostile. Whatever happened at 4 p.m., nothing would be the same afterward. She just hoped she'd still have a career when the dust settled. Conference Room A, normally used for board meetings and donor presentations, was packed to capacity by 3:55 p.m. Emergency department staff filled every chair with additional personnel standing along the walls. The tension was palpable as Amara slipped into a seat in the back row, conscious of the glances directed her way. At precisely 4 p.m., Dr. Josephine Chen entered, followed by Marcus Thompson from Risk Management and Sophia Rivera, the ED's head nurse. Conspicuously absent was Dr. Wells. Dr. Chen didn't waste time with pleasantries. Thank you all for being here on short notice. I've called this meeting to address serious concerns regarding patient care in the emergency department. The room fell completely silent as she continued. 1 week ago, Nurse Amara Johnson activated the chain of command protocol during a disagreement with Dr. Adrian Wells regarding the care of a patient, Mrs. Eva Rodriguez. That action saved Mrs. Rodriguez's life and also brought to light patterns of care that demanded further investigation. Amara felt her heart racing as all eyes briefly turned toward her. Following this incident, Risk Management conducted a thorough review of patient outcomes over the past 3 years. Dr. Chen nodded to Marcus, who distributed packets of information to those seated at the table. What we found was deeply troubling, she continued. There has been a statistically significant pattern of misdiagnoses among female patients and patients of color, particularly when presenting with symptoms that could be attributed to either anxiety or serious physical conditions like cardiac events. Murmurs spread through the room as staff members began reviewing the data. To be absolutely clear, Dr. Chen's voice cut through the whispers, this is not about one doctor or one nurse. This is about systemic biases that have affected patient care and safety. It's about whose symptoms we take seriously and whose pain we validate. The room grew uncomfortably quiet as the implications sank in. Effective immediately, we are implementing several changes. Dr. Chen outlined new protocols for peer review of anxiety diagnoses, mandatory training on implicit bias for all clinical staff, and a revised chain of command procedure that offered greater protection for those who raised concerns. Then she addressed the elephant in the room. Regarding the specific incident that brought these issues to light, Dr. Wells has been placed on administrative leave pending a full review of his cases, and Nurse Johnson, Amara held her breath, has demonstrated the highest standards of patient advocacy and professional ethics. Her actions will be commended in her personnel file, and she will be part of the task force developing our new protocols. The relief that flooded through Amara was overwhelming. She fought to maintain her composure as colleagues nearby offered silent thumbs-up and supportive nods. I want to be perfectly clear about something, Dr. Chen continued, her gaze sweeping the room. Mercy General cannot claim to provide excellent health care if that excellence is not extended equally to all patients regardless of gender, race, or socioeconomic status. The data we've uncovered is shameful, and correcting these disparities starts today. As the meeting continued with questions and discussion, Amara remained silent, processing the unexpected vindication. She had risked everything to advocate for one patient, never imagining it would lead to institutional soul-searching and systemic change. When Dr. Chen finally concluded the meeting, she made her way directly to where Amara sat. Nurse Johnson, could I speak with you privately? Of course, Dr. Chen, Amara replied, following the chief of medicine out of the conference room and into a quieter hallway. I wanted to personally thank you, Dr. Chen said once they were alone. Your courage forced us to confront uncomfortable truths that might otherwise have remained hidden. I was just doing my job, Amara said quietly. No, Dr. Chen corrected her. You did much more than your job. You chose the patient's welfare over professional self-preservation. That's exceptional. She paused. There's something else you should know. Mrs. Rodriguez has filed a formal complaint against Dr. Wells and has been quite vocal about your role in saving her life. Amara hadn't known this and felt a complex mix of gratitude and concern. What happens to Dr. Wells now? She asked. That's not yet decided, Dr. Chen admitted. There will be a thorough review, possibly remediation, but regardless of the outcome for him individually, the system is changing because of what you set in motion. She handed Amara a business card. My direct line. If you ever need anything or notice similar concerns in the future, call me immediately. As Dr. Chen walked away, Amara stood motionless in the hallway, the card in her hand representing a seismic shift in the hospital's power dynamics. For the first time in a week, she allowed herself to feel something beyond anxiety, a quiet pride in standing her ground when it mattered most. If you're finding this story compelling, consider subscribing to our channel. We deliver powerful, thought-provoking narratives like this one every week, exploring the complexities of human relationships and institutional change. Hit subscribe now to make sure you never miss a story. 2 weeks after the department meeting, Mercy General Hospital's main auditorium was filled to capacity for a special Grand Rounds presentation. The topic, addressing implicit bias in diagnostic decision-making, had drawn staff from every department. Amara sat in the middle rows, still adjusting to her new visibility within the hospital. Since the revelations about care disparities had emerged, she'd been approached by countless colleagues sharing similar experiences or expressing support. The attention made her uncomfortable, but she recognized its importance in the larger movement for change. Dr. Chen took the podium to introduce the session's special guest, Dr. Vanessa Washington, a nationally recognized expert on healthcare disparities from Johns Hopkins. Before we begin, Dr. Chen announced, I'd like to share some developments in our ongoing efforts to address the issues we identified. She outlined the preliminary findings from the expanded chart review, which had confirmed alarming patterns not just in the emergency department but throughout the hospital. New protocols were being implemented, and an oversight committee had been formed with representation from diverse staff members, including Amara. Finally, Dr. Chen concluded, I want to acknowledge that confronting these biases is difficult and uncomfortable work. It requires humility and courage from all of us, regardless of our position or seniority. As Dr. Washington began her presentation, Amara noticed a familiar figure slipping into the auditorium, Dr. Adrian Wells. He looked different, humbled somehow, without his usual confident demeanor. Finding a seat in the back row, he listened intently as Dr. Washington presented case studies eerily similar to Mrs. Rodriguez's. After the presentation, as people mingled during the reception, Amara was engaged in conversation with several nurses when she felt a presence beside her. Turning, she found herself face-to-face with Dr. Wells. An awkward silence fell over the group as others discreetly stepped away, leaving them in a small bubble of privacy amid the crowded room. Nurse Johnson, he began, his voice lacking its usual authority. I owe you an apology. Amara remained silent, waiting. I've spent the past 2 weeks reviewing my cases, examining my decision-making processes, and confronting some uncomfortable truths about myself. He met her eyes directly. You were right about Mrs. Rodriguez and likely about other patients as well. It wasn't about being right, Dr. Wells, Amara replied carefully. It was about doing right by our patient. Yes, he acknowledged. I see that now. The review panel has recommended remediation and implicit bias training before I can return to clinical practice. He paused. I wanted you to know that I'm not contesting their decision. I need to be better for my patients. The admission visibly cost him, his professional pride clearly wounded. But Amara recognized genuine reflection in his words, the beginning of what would likely be a long and difficult journey. We all have biases, Dr. Wells, she said. The important thing is acknowledging them and working to ensure they don't affect patient care. He nodded. The panel also suggested I work more collaboratively with nursing staff when I return. A hint of his old smile appeared. They specifically recommended I listen to you. I think we could all benefit from listening to each other more carefully, Amara offered diplomatically. As Dr. Wells excused himself to speak with Dr. Chen, Sophia Rivera appeared at Amara's side. That looked intense, the head nurse observed. It was unexpected, Amara admitted. People can surprise you, Sophia said. Sometimes it takes a crisis to spark real change in individuals and institutions. Looking around the room, Amara saw new conversations happening everywhere, physicians engaged with nurses as equals, staff from different backgrounds sharing perspectives, administrators listening intently to frontline workers. Something fundamental had shifted at Mercy General. The real test will be whether these changes last, Amara said, voicing her lingering concern. That's where you come in, Sophia replied. Dr. Chen mentioned you've been asked to chair the new patient advocacy committee. Amara hadn't yet accepted the position, uncertain if she wanted such visibility. I'm still considering it, she admitted. Consider this, Sophia said quietly. If not you, then who? You've earned credibility with both administration and staff. People trust you. As Sophia walked away, Amara contemplated the responsibility being offered to her. It was an opportunity to ensure that what happened with Mrs. Rodriguez wouldn't happen to other patients, to transform a painful incident into lasting institutional change. Later that evening, as she prepared to leave the hospital, Amara found a note in her locker. Opening it, she recognized Mrs. Rodriguez's handwriting. "Nurse Johnson, my family and I can never repay you for what you did. The hospital called today to tell me about the changes they're making because of my case. You didn't just save my life, you might be saving many others. My daughter starts nursing school next year. I told her I hope she becomes half the nurse you are." With eternal gratitude, Eva Rodriguez, with tears blurring her vision, Amara carefully folded the note and placed it in her purse. The weight of her decision about the committee position suddenly felt lighter. Some callings couldn't be ignored, no matter how difficult the path might be. 6 months later, Amara stood at the podium in the same auditorium, now addressing a regional healthcare conference on patient advocacy and institutional change. The audience included staff from hospitals across the state, as well as medical and nursing students eager to learn from Mercy General's transformation. The case of Mrs. Rodriguez was a turning point, she explained, not because it was unique, but because it finally forced us to confront patterns that had been normalized for too long. Slides behind her displayed the dramatic improvements in patient outcomes since the implementation of new protocols, particularly among female patients and patients of color who presented with symptoms previously dismissed as anxiety. Change isn't easy, Amara acknowledged. It requires constant vigilance, accountability at all levels, and the courage to speak up even when it's professionally risky. From her seat in the front row, Dr. Chen nodded encouragingly. Beside her sat Dr. Wells, now back on limited clinical duties and serving as an unexpected ally in the hospital's ongoing transformation. His personal reckoning had evolved into a commitment to mentor younger physicians on collaborative care models. "The most important lesson we've learned," Amara continued, "is that patient advocacy isn't a singular act of heroism. It's a daily practice that must be embedded in our healthcare culture." As she concluded her presentation, the applause was robust. During the Q&A session that followed, a nursing student raised her hand. "After everything that happened, weren't you tempted to leave Mercy General, to go somewhere your expertise would have been respected from the beginning?" It was a question Amara had asked herself many times over the past months. There were moments when leaving seemed easier, she admitted, but transforming a flawed system from within, though harder, creates more lasting change than walking away from it. She smiled. "Besides, Mercy General is my hospital too. I have as much right to shape its culture as anyone else." Later, at the reception, Amara found herself in conversation with Dr. Chen and several hospital board members. "The data speaks for itself," one board member was saying. "Patient satisfaction scores up 17%, reduced readmission rates, and significantly fewer complaints across all demographic groups. And the unexpected benefit," added another, "has been staff retention. Nursing turnover is down 30% since implementing the new collaborative care model." Dr. Chen smiled. "When people feel heard and valued, they stay. It's not complicated." "Shouldn't have taken a crisis to make these changes," Amara said quietly. "No," Dr. Chen agreed, "but that's often how progress happens, not in grand gestures, but in individual moments of courage that force institutional reckoning." As the evening wound down, Amara found a quiet moment alone with Dr. Chen. "I have news," the chief of medicine said, her expression serious. "The American Hospital Association has selected Mercy General's transformation program as a national model. They want us to develop training materials for other institutions." "That's wonderful," Amara replied. "There's more," Dr. Chen continued. "They specifically requested that you lead the development team. It would mean a new position, Director of Healthcare Equity and Patient Advocacy." Amara's surprise must have shown on her face. "You've earned this, Amara," Dr. Chen said gently. "Your courage started a movement that's now extending beyond our walls." As Amara drove home that night, she reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 6 months. From nearly losing her job to being offered a leadership position developing national standards, all because she'd refused to be silenced when a patient's life was at stake. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "How'd your presentation go?" She smiled, typing back. "Really well. I'll tell you all about it tomorrow. Big news." Pulling into her apartment complex, Amara noticed something. The anxiety that had been her constant companion since the incident with Dr. Wells had finally lifted. In its place was a quiet confidence, not just in her nursing skills, but in her voice and her right to use it. Sometimes, she realized, the most important thing wasn't having all the answers or even being certain of the outcome. Sometimes, it was simply having the courage to speak truth in the face of power, to stand firm when it would be easier to bend, to insist on being heard when systems were designed to silence. And in doing so, to change not just one patient's fate, but an entire institution's future. If you've been moved by Amara's journey, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that challenge perspectives and inspire positive change. Join our community by clicking the subscribe button now. As the conference concluded, Amara found herself in the hospital's lobby studying the donor wall where the Wells family name prominently featured. A voice behind her broke her contemplation. "Quite a legacy, isn't it?" She turned to find Dr. Wells, his expression thoughtful as he too regarded the wall. "Yes," she agreed simply. "You know, I've been thinking about legacy lately," he said. "For generations, my family has measured its contribution to medicine in buildings and endowments." He gestured to the wall. "Tangible things you can put a name on." Amara waited, sensing he had more to say. "But in all our family discussions about medical legacy, no one ever mentioned the patients whose diagnoses we missed or the voices we failed to hear." He turned to face her directly. "That's the legacy I almost continued until you interrupted the pattern." "It wasn't just about you, Dr. Wells," Amara reminded him gently. "No," he acknowledged. "The problem was systemic, but systems are made of individuals making choices." He paused. "I've been volunteering at the community clinic in Eva Rodriguez's neighborhood, getting to know the community, understanding their healthcare experiences." This was news to Amara. "How's that going?" "It's humbling," he admitted. "And necessary. I'm learning more than I'm teaching." As they walked together toward the exit, Dr. Wells asked, "Will you accept the new position?" "I'm still considering it," Amara replied, though in truth she had already decided. The opportunity to expand Mercy General's transformation to other hospitals was too important to decline. "For what it's worth, I hope you will," he said as they reached the doors. "Not everyone can translate personal courage into institutional change. You can." With that, he nodded goodbye and headed toward the parking garage, leaving Amara to reflect on the strange turns life could take. 6 months ago, this conversation would have been unimaginable. Now it felt like a fitting closure to one chapter and the opening of another. Outside, the evening was cool and clear. Amara took a deep breath, savoring the moment of transition. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as she stepped into a broader leadership role, but tonight she could appreciate how far they'd all come. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Saw you on the hospital's social media today. So proud of what you're doing. My daughter would love to talk with you about nursing school when you have time." Smiling, Amara typed back, "I'd be honored. Let's arrange something soon." As she walked to her car, Amara thought about all the Mrs. Rodriguez's out there, patients whose symptoms were dismissed, whose pain was minimized, whose lives hung in the balance while medical professionals failed to listen across differences of race, gender, or culture. And she thought about all the healthcare workers like herself, those who saw the problems but felt powerless to address them, who feared professional consequences for challenging the hierarchy, who needed someone to demonstrate that change was possible. The work ahead was substantial. One hospital's transformation, however significant, was just the beginning. But now there was a roadmap, data to support the changes, and growing momentum for a more equitable healthcare system. Amara's individual stand for one patient had evolved into something much larger, a movement toward healthcare that truly valued every voice and every life equally. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a powerful beginning. And sometimes, that was enough. What moments in your life have required you to stand up for what's right, even when it was difficult? Have you witnessed how one person's courage can transform an entire system? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that explore the complex moral questions we face in our communities and institutions.